That is Sherborne Abbey. We're in Sherborne, the town of Sherborne, which is West Dorset, and it's nearly in Somerset, which is my own county that I love to be in. And we're here because we're celebrating the life of Aldhelm. Again, you might well not have heard of Aldhelm, although if you've searched for this on YouTube, then maybe you want to know about him or are wondering what's out there about him. Well, this is the place where he was made Bishop of Sherborne. He is the first Bishop of Sherborne in 705. I mean, that is such a long time ago, isn't it? I mean, we can't really get our heads around it. This is nearly 200 years before King Alfred the Great, who was the chief person to lead the revolt against the Vikings. And this is 200 years before that. This is 200 years before Dunstan was born. And I made a video about Dunstan before. Again, this is such a long time ago. But in the year 705, it was decided that the Diocese of Winchester, which is basically the whole of Wessex, so that's from Winchester all the way down into Exeter and Devon and maybe even to Cornwall, this is just too big, and so we need to cut it in half, and we'll have an eastern half which is governed by the Bishop of Winchester, and we'll have a western half which is governed by the Bishop of Sherborne. And so Aldhelm was chosen for that task in the year 705, and he came here and he built an abbey, and that isn't it. So that's sort of Norman, post-Norman, but the actual abbey that he built is to the west, which is over there, and that's not there anymore because that would be a building that would be 1,300 years old, and there aren't really many of those left. So just to finish off the piece about Sherborne, so the Bishop of Sherborne now is underneath the Bishop of Salisbury, and the Diocese of Salisbury was instituted by the Normans about 300 years later, 400 years later. So what we're going to do is work out why Aldhelm was chosen for that job, and I think we'll go somewhere else to do that. So why was Aldhelm chosen for this task? Well, we don't know an awful lot about his early life, but we do know that he was highly educated, and he received an education probably in Canterbury. He was very good at Latin, and in actual fact, he started to pioneer new forms of Latin, which would be more poetic and beautiful. We understand that he probably could do a bit of Greek, which was very uncommon in the 7th century when he was born. And he eventually became the Abbot of Malmesbury. So that's kind of how he came to the attention of authorities, and the King of Wessex, Innes, I believe, who appointed him Bishop of Sherborne. So at Malmesbury, he established this Benedictine monastery. So 7th century Benedictine monasteries were really important. And, you know, as we look back last time at the Dunstan video, Benedictine monasteries came and went and had come and gone in some places by the year sort of 900, and actually he brought them back. Dunstan brought them back. So Aldhelm, so far ago, was actually part of the early surge into the Benedictine order. And so at Malmesbury, he made a real difference there. He set up a Benedictine monastery, and that went very well. We also think that he went to Rome at one point as well, and was just a general man of letters. But speaking of which, one might think, well, what did he leave behind? Why are we so sure he was a man of letters? Well, there isn't any great work that survives him, but there are letters, and there are books about poetry and metre, but also there are books about puzzles, and he left behind 101 riddles called Enigmata. And some people think, well, that's a bit of a waste of an education, isn't it? And I think there's some issue with that, which I'll talk about in a moment. But anyway, after that career, he came here towards the end of his life. He didn't particularly want to be the bishop, but he wanted to serve the church in that way, so he came here. And it was when he was doing his rounds as bishop to the north of here, in Somerset, in Dalting, that he sadly died. And that is a church of St Aldhelm, which I might go to one day for a video when I'm passing. It's on the way to my parents, and my auntie lived just down the road from there as well. So what we'll do next is we'll have a think a little bit about Aldhelm's legacy, his love of language and what that means. But also there's a blue plaque around the corner for someone very different who I think relates to all that. So stick around to see who the blue plaque is for. Before we wander off for that blue plaque, let me just finish off the story of the abbey, which is kind of quite interesting. So as I say, that's a later abbey, but it's still pretty early, isn't it? We're looking at the 11th and 12th centuries, and that ran as a Benedictine abbey. And of course, we all know what happened to Benedictine abbeys. In 1538-9, they all went, they all disappeared. They were all dissolved by Henry VIII. And what happened with this one is it is still standing, which is brilliant. There are plenty of ruined abbeys all over England, which is astonishing when you think about it. They would build something like that and then let it fall down, pull it down, steal stones to build other buildings. But actually, this was bought by somebody locally. They bought it off the crown and they gave it to the town to become the parish church of Sherborne. So this has been a parish church since the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539, and it is still used today. And I've been to plenty of services there because also the schools in Sherborne use it too. So that is how that majestic building is still standing, and I think we're all very glad that it is. Right, we're heading away from the abbey now. We're wandering down Finger Lane, and let's just talk a bit about the legacy of Aldhelm. And I've read one or two people who've commented that, considering how learned he was, he really should have left more in terms of legacy. Shouldn't there be a great work of literature or theology by him? He did write some stuff about chastity for the sake of some nuns, and he wrote other stuff about metre and poetry, as I've mentioned before. But also he left these riddles behind, and some people say, well, that's just frippery and nonsense. I mean, he was just overindulging himself with puzzles. But actually, when you think about it, I mean, puzzles are great. I mean, we like puzzles, we're interested in puzzles, and actually they intrigue us and they draw us in. And what he was doing by writing these puzzles, some of which were about very mundane objects as well, you just think, I know somebody else who told stories and puzzles about mundane and everyday objects. That would be Jesus telling parables. I mean, Jesus fully understood how the human brain works, that we're constantly trying to make order out of chaos. We take clues and we try to piece them together in a particular way. I mean, that is a divine thing to do, is to bring order out of chaos. We see that in Genesis chapter 1. And so Aldhelm was using these techniques, partly because I think he loved it and he revelled in it, and also he didn't need to justify himself. And it's really interesting. If you go over to Cary's Almanac, which is where I write about this kind of stuff, and you'll find a companion article about this, and you'll find lots of others like it as we go through the Christian calendar in England. I write about how I was reminded of Peter Cook. Now, Peter Cook was a comedian from the 70s, 80s, 90s, but actually he made his name in the 60s. And when he died in 1995, having probably drunk too much and not fulfilled his potential, according to some, because he was just a brilliant, brilliant person, he sort of wasted his life on jokes and didn't really do anything. And it's interesting that his biggest advocate at that moment was Stephen Fry, who said that he didn't need to justify himself to anybody. And I think Stephen Fry was protesting a little bit too much, I think, there. But, I mean, what could be more wonderful than revelry and joy in language? And so, you know, these accusations that he shouldn't have wasted his career on poetry and those sorts of things for Aldhelm. I mean, look at the New York Times. The New York Times is essentially a puzzle organisation with a loss-making news agency attached to it. The puzzles are what keep those newspapers going. The same with the Daily Telegraph and the Times in the United Kingdom. These puzzles are what are keeping newspapers in business. They've already lost all their money from classified adverts from the internet, and so puzzles is all they've got left. Quiz shows are very popular. UK television has got loads of ones that do really good numbers because we love puzzles. And Aldhelm fully understood this. And the other thing he used to do was he played the harp. And back in the 7th century, not everyone went to church. It wasn't like it was 700 years later. he would play the harp by roadsides and engage people in conversation. And he would tell stories and riddles and have conversations with people to intrigue them about the gospel. And that's actually what we do now, isn't it? When we're trying to evangelise, we're trying to tell people about Jesus Christ, we're asking questions rather than just downloading information, although sometimes we do that and it isn't terribly effective. So Aldhelm in the 7th century was pioneering all of this stuff, and here we are rediscovering things over 1,000 years later. If you want to know more about that, Christian, go to my Almanac, Cary's Almanac. But what we'll do now is we'll go and find that blue plaque for someone else who has an overlapping interest in puzzles. And they're based here in Sherborne. I wonder if you can guess who it is. So there's the blue plaque over there for Alan Turing, who went to Sherborne School. He was a boarder there, and they're kind of claiming him as one of their own, which is entirely fair enough. Particularly schools like this have got to cling on to all their famous alumni. But Alan Turing is, of course, the one who went to Bletchley Park in the late 30s, early 40s, and helped develop the computer that cracked the Enigma code machine. Didn't happen exactly as it appears to in the Imitation Game, and I know a little bit about this because in a former life I wrote a sitcom called Hut 33, which is a sitcom set in Bletchley Park during World War II, and you can find that on Audible if you want to go and have a listen to that. It's interesting, isn't it, that here in the place of Aldhelm, who was the puzzle maker, is you've got Alan Turing, who is the puzzle breaker. And of course, the fact that we can now use computers to break puzzles doesn't mean puzzles are any less popular. And in fact, also, you know, I'm not writing sitcoms at the moment. Why? Because everything's murder mysteries. And what are murder mysteries? They're puzzles. So anyway, that's the life of Aldhelm. Sorry it's a little bit windy, but thanks for being with me. Go and check out Cary's Almanac. There's loads of this kind of thing. All the different dates in the Christian calendar here in England. And I'll speak to you next time.